Gone are the days when a TV show's plot was simple and straightforward. In modern times, fans are always looking for hidden messages, Easter eggs, or connections between these shows, resulting in some fascinating fan theories, some of which are rather outlandish. But many of these theories have been proven as true by their creators, giving these shows even more depth than previously thought. Number 10. The Last of Us is a horror television series based on a video game that was released in 2014. The game, which was produced by the development company Naughty Dog, proved to be so popular that the decision was made to turn it into a series, and it was well received by audiences. The plot of both the game and the series' first season is that a pandemic brought about by a mass fungal infection called cordyceps broke out across the world in 2013. It could not be contained and started turning people who were infected into strange feral creatures that resembled zombies. It's up to one of the main characters, a man named Joel, to transport a teenage girl named Ellie out of a military quarantine area so that she can be handed over to a group called the Fireflies. They travel west in hopes that they'll find a cure for the pandemic, but there are many obstacles along the way. Not only do they avoid and at times fight the zombie-like creatures, but they're also hunted by other survivors with nefarious intentions, as well as people from the military who have figured out that Ellie is immune to the infection. To make matters worse, whenever a fight breaks out, the noise from discharged firearms attracts hordes of infected people whose only purpose is to infect as many others as possible, ensuring that the infection spreads as far and wide as it can. The game was hugely successful, and the show also did very well, but it spawned several fan conspiracy theories. One suggests that the infection was spread from a natural disaster, such as an earthquake, which released the spores and started infecting people around the world. The disaster also prompts people to gather en masse, spreading the infection faster via bites from those who've already been infected. Furthermore, medical and military personnel who were present at these gatherings would quickly have been bitten and would no longer have been able to render any aid to people who'd been injured on their journey there. Another theory suggests that Joel was part of a special containment procedure that was breached, explaining why the task force was able to respond to the outbreak so quickly, but was ultimately powerless to stop the infection's spread. Some fans have also wondered whether Joel may be immune to the infection, since he seemingly had no second thoughts when encountering the infected, and charges into combat with no regard for his own safety. But one of the most discussed theories is how Ellie managed to become immune. Since we know that Ellie's mother Anna is no longer alive, it's certain that she was not immune, and this is also confirmed in a letter she wrote to Ellie that appears in the game, which reads, "You're not even a day old, and holding you is the most incredible thing I've done in my life, a life that is about to get cut a little short." At first, it was suggested that Anna simply passed away after giving birth to Ellie, but this didn't explain how Ellie became immune. It was then theorized that Anna was bitten while pregnant, and that this acted as an inoculation against the infection. This theory was later confirmed by the show, and finally, fans had the answers that they were looking for, even if it was only to one of the many theories out there. Number 9. Dexter, a crime series that aired in October of 2006. Dexter is a crime series that first aired in October of 2006, and since then it's gained somewhat of a cult following. The show is based on a 2004 novel by Jeff Lindsay called Darkly Dreaming Dexter, with the main character being a man called Dexter Morgan. Fair warning, this entry contains spoilers for Dexter New Blood. Dexter is employed by the Miami Metro Police Department, where he works as a forensic analyst. But unbeknownst to his colleagues and his sister Deborah, who's a homicide detective for the same department, Dexter has a secret and very dark second life. Dexter was adopted when he was still young and was told by his adoptive parents, Harry and Doris Morgan, that his mother and father had passed away. It's later revealed that his father passed due to a car accident, while his mother's life was ended by an illegal substance smuggler in full view of Dexter and his brother. But Dexter's main secret is the fact that he was born a psychopath who has violent tendencies. He struggled with this as a child, but when he turned 10 years old, his adopted father, Harry, noticed what was going on and helped him find an outlet for his condition. He taught Dexter to hunt, and eventually this evolved further with Dexter seeking out people who he deemed unfit to be a part of society, such as murderers and other criminals who prey on the weak. At some point, he decided to make it his hobby to find these people and end their lives. Hence, he becomes a serial killer while working for the police department, often leaving viewers on the edge of their seats as he does his best not to get caught by the officers that he works with. The show was an instant hit as soon as it was released, and before long, people around the world were talking about it and trying to figure out how the plot would evolve. The original run of Dexter lasted for a full 8 seasons, with 96 episodes being produced. But after it concluded, it became clear that fans not only wanted more of the show, but also had some unanswered questions. And in 2021, a 10-episode sequel called Dexter New Blood was released. This is to be followed by a prequel called Dexter Original Sin that was slated for release in mid-December of 2024. It'll follow Dexter's beginnings at the police department and has already spawned a fan theory. Since Dexter loses his life at the end of Dexter New Blood, fans were confused as to how the younger Dexter's inner voice would be presented in the new series. Some thought that the voiceover would be provided by a younger actor, or that there simply wouldn't be any voiceover, which left many people skeptical about whether the new series would be as engaging as the first two. Excitement had been building for some time after the prequel's release was announced, and fans were elated to learn that Dexter, who's played by actor Michael C. Hall, would be making at least one cameo appearance. When the official full-length trailer was released, it was also confirmed that Hall would be providing the voice for the younger Dexter's inner voice, and it's fair to say that fans of the franchise are waiting with bated breath for the show to be aired. Number 8. If you grew up in the 1980s, you'll be very familiar with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, a cartoon that featured 4 sewer turtles that came into contact with a mutagen called ooze. They were raised by a human ninjutsu teacher called Yoshi, who kept the turtles as pets. But when he got into an altercation with drones owned by the Krang, a race of evil aliens, he was also splashed by the ooze and turned into a rat called Splinter. Following this, he took the turtles down into the sewer to hide them from the rest of the world and started teaching them martial arts. At one point in the series, he's given the chance to become human again, but realizes that he wouldn't fit into society anymore. He also feels that he would rather live with his turtle sons and so remains a rat. Together, he and the 4 turtles, named Leonardo, Donatello, Raphael, and Michelangelo, fight against an adversary called Shredder, and his cronies, who seek to attain as much power as possible by any means necessary, in order to create a massive army. It was without a doubt one of the most popular cartoons of its day, and resulted in several movies and follow-up TV series being released. The show remains as popular today as it was back then, if only for nostalgic reasons, and has even spawned a few fan conspiracy theories. Some fans started wondering whether the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles shared a universe with another popular comic character, Daredevil, since they seemed to share some uncanny similarities. Both the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Daredevil started out as comics, the Turtles first appearing in 1984, while Daredevil made its first appearance 2 decades earlier in 1964. Both of these comics were turned into TV series, and then into feature-length movies. Furthermore, the Turtles and Daredevil were all trained in ninjutsu. Both series had dark overtones to it, and both were set in New York. Daredevil is trained by a blind sensei called Stick, while the Turtles are trained by Splinter. While the Turtles on occasion fight against a clan of evil ninjas called the Foot, Daredevil has to contend with enemies from a supervillain organization called the Hand, and before long, some fans started noticing these similarities and started speculating that the Turtles and Daredevil exist in the same universe, as unlikely as that may seem. It was later confirmed that the creators of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Peter Laird and Kevin Eastman, purposefully added these details into the cartoon to pay homage to the Daredevil character. But they didn't stop there. In one issue of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic, a screen plays out in which a blind man walks out into the road and ends up in front of an oncoming truck that's carrying canisters of ooze. Matt Murdock, who would later become Daredevil, pushes the man out of the way but gets struck in the face by one of the canisters, and he later wakes up in the hospital having lost his sight. In the meantime, the ooze ends up in the sewers beneath the city and mutates Splinter and the Turtles. While both the origin stories in these comics have since been altered, there's no denying that they take place in the same universe, confirming what many fans have been suspecting for decades. Number 7. Another cartoon that became hugely popular in the 90s was Captain Planet and the Planeteers, which features a crystal blue superhero who strives to eliminate all the pollution in the world. He employs the services of 5 children who become the Planeteers, each of whom receives a special ring that can summon him, and together they fight against an array of villains, all of whom need to be stopped before harming the planet. While it isn't known how Captain Planet came into existence, it's certain that he's been around for eons. In fact, he's friends with Gaia, the spirit of Earth, and at one point she hints at the fact that the children aren't the first people to wield the rings that she gave them. Each of the rings corresponds to a different element: earth, fire, wind, and water. However, the 5th ring represents heart. When the rings are combined, they summon Captain Planet, who's always able to save the day no matter how dire the consequences. One of the main villains that he and the Planeteers have to contend with is a humanoid rat called Verminous Scum. He loves nothing more than causing havoc through pollution and spreading diseases. He's also been known to turn humans into half-breed rat slaves, create acid rain that falls down on the planet, and he does everything in his power to get rid of Captain Planet. Not many people know that in the show's first season, Verminous Scum was voiced by none other than Jeff Goldblum. The first villain that we ever see in the show, though, is a pig-like man called Hoggish Greedly. The personification of overconsumption and greed, he uses his pig-themed polluting gadgets to further enrich himself, but always at the expense of the planet. There are several other villains that threaten Earth's existence, including Loot and Plunder, Dr. Blight, and Argos Bleak, all of whom are repeatedly defeated by the Captain and his Planeteers, only to swear revenge upon fleeing in most instances. As for the Captain, he has his own set of superpowers, including transmutation, elemental manipulation, and the ability to help plants grow. He can also alter the weather at will, create electricity, teleport, and has the uncanny ability to sense imbalances in nearby environments. Together, they make a formidable team that saves the Earth over and over again. At the end of each episode, one of the Planeteers, or Captain Planet, would appear on screen to deliver a hopeful message or a warning about the environment, urging kids to be a part of the solution rather than the problem. The show left fans with many questions, such as where Captain Planet came from and how Gaia came into existence. This resulted in many fan theories being suggested, and one of those has been confirmed as accurate. It wasn't until 2 decades after the show was last aired that one of the main theories was confirmed by the creator, Barbara Pyle. She stated that Captain Planet doesn't actually exist and that he's merely a figment of the Planeteers' imaginations. He exists in their minds as the personification of teamwork, and so still helps them defeat their enemies, but isn't an actual superhero. Pyle later stated that she was surprised that fans of the show hadn't figured this out earlier. Number 6. When it comes to science fiction shows, few have as big of a following as Star Trek. The show has been through many iterations, including The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, and Discovery, to name but a few. This has resulted in fans constantly arguing over which series was the best, and which captain at the helm of the Enterprise was the more legendary, with most people leaning towards either Captain James T. Kirk or Jean-Luc Picard. The show is full of strange and wonderful characters from different alien species, some of which work for Starfleet, an organization that focuses on the exploration of deep space and the different cultures that can be found there. But while exploring different star systems and planets, they often encounter enemies, each of which has their own agenda and types of technology, such as the Borg, who exists as a hive mind of cybernetic organisms. They're one of the more formidable foes in the franchise, as they display no emotion and are always on the lookout for beings that can be assimilated into their collective consciousness by injecting them with nanoprobes and then adding cybernetic components to their bodies. The Ferengi are another of the better-known races of villains. They have only one goal in mind: to enrich themselves, and they regard anyone with money as a friend, as long as they aren't female, since they're seen as inferior, and in their culture are not allowed to accumulate wealth. The Gorn are a bipedal reptilian race that first was introduced to audiences in the original Star Trek series. They possess superior strength and technology similar to that of the Starfleet, and hence are seen as a formidable threat. Then there are the Cardassians. They make their first appearance in Star Trek: The Next Generation, and are revealed to have once been a race of highly intellectual people who were then forced to become militaristic when famine and disease ravished their people. This resulted in a military dictatorship being formed, which protected their citizens and helped them become prosperous, but they were also constantly under surveillance by the Obsidian Order. But one of the most frequent threats to the characters in Star Trek is a race called the Klingons, though this changed as the franchise grew, since they joined the Federation during Star Trek: The Next Generation. Best remembered for their cranial ridges, a set of bony plates that are situated on their foreheads, they're a race of warriors that take delight in battle. They also have a set of strict beliefs from which they refuse to waver, and coupled with their explosive and unpredictable personalities, make for a formidable foe. They're also the subject of a fan conspiracy theory that's since been confirmed in Star Trek Discovery. During the first season, Klingons didn't look that different from humans, since the show had a very limited budget. But as time went by and the show became more popular, their appearance was altered to include more cranial ridges, making these warriors look far more intimidating. But some people started to speculate that they'd undergone genetic modification. In Star Trek Enterprise, we learned that this is indeed the case. It's revealed that in 2154, a Klingon scientist decided to try and create a new superior version of Klingon. When this was done, one of the side effects was the loss of their cranial ridges. But then a disease called the Levodian flu breaks out, and the resulting antivirus causes any Klingon who receives it to also lose their ridges. As time went by, the antivirus had less of an effect, and eventually Klingon babies were once again born with their cranial ridges intact, confirming a long-standing fan theory. Number 5. When the fantasy television series Game of Thrones was first aired in 2011, it took the world by storm. Viewers were enthralled by the massive landscapes, intertwining family dramas, and the battles that took place along with the unpredictable nature of the show. Based on the books written by George R.R. Martin, the show became famous for the fact that any character could lose their life at any moment, and immediately they were introduced to some very interesting characters, some of which were seen as good guys, while others were brutal and warmongering. Some people found it hard to keep up with all the characters, since there were many different families involved, some of which overlapped with others. But some characters seemed to have very little backstory, resulting in many fan theories being suggested. One such theory is known as R+L=J, and revolves around one of the more popular characters, a member of the Night's Watch called Jon Snow, who swears to protect the wall that separates them from outside threats. He joins the Watch early in the show, and later is elected as Lord Commander, but he isn't as popular with some of the characters in the show, who find his decision-making abilities questionable, such as the fact that he lets the Wildlings, a group that live on the other side of the wall, settle outside of the wall. Their distrust of Snow only grows, and eventually a mutiny breaks out, during which he loses his life, only to be resurrected by the Red Priestess, Melisandre, later on. Not much is known about Snow, despite him being one of the most popular characters, and soon fans started to speculate about his origins. This gave birth to the theory that became known as R+L=J, and before long it had attained legendary status, since it was seemingly the only one that fully explained where Snow came from. The theory was first suggested back in 1997 on the Usenet site. A user called Roderick suggested that Snow was the son of two of the main characters, Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark. They further suggested that Ned Stark, who loses his life very early on in the show, kept this a secret, since Robert Baratheon became obsessed with ending the Targaryen line and had a special hate for any of Rhaegar's descendants. In the series, it's said that Rhaegar kidnapped Lyanna after falling in love with her, and that this evoked the wrath in Baratheon. He then goes to war with the Targaryens, bringing about the clan's fall. However, it's also speculated that the couple merely eloped, and while giving birth to Jon Snow, she lost her life. Ned Stark was the last person to see her and made a promise to her, which remained a mystery. In the Season 6 finale of the show, it was confirmed that Lyanna passed away during childbirth, and in the Season 7 finale, this theory was finally fully confirmed, bringing to an end a fan theory about Jon Snow's parentage that's existed since the mid-1990s. Number 4. Death Note is one of the most popular anime series ever created. The plot follows a young man called Light Yagami, who's grown disillusioned in the world thanks to all the crime and corruption that he's witnessed. One day he stumbles across a mysterious book that he finds lying on the ground and notices that it's called Death Note. But when he opens it, he finds nothing but blank pages, leaving him perplexed. But he soon learns that the true purpose of the book is that when the owner writes someone's name on its blank pages, they'll lose their life. At first, he doesn't believe the rumor to be true, but when he decides to experiment, he's shocked to learn that it is very real. He then meets a Shinigami, which is akin to a Grim Reaper, called Ryuk, and learns that he's the book's previous owner. Before long, Light realizes that he can use the book to create a better world, and he decides to create a new world order by getting rid of anyone who he deems to be evil. Unsurprisingly, this results in many people passing away without explanation, and a detective, known only as L, starts to investigate. He soon learns that the person responsible is living somewhere in Japan, and that they've been given the moniker Kira. When Light learns that L is after him, the two engage in a fascinating battle of wits. Following this, the plot becomes very complicated, as all the rules of the Death Note are revealed along with the fact that there is more than one. Eventually, Light decides to renounce his and another Death Note, and hands himself over to L, and together they work to expose the Yotsuba Company, which employs 8 people, each of whom has a Death Note that they use to make as much profit as possible. But he turns on L and orders another Shinigami called Rem to end his life, and Light then takes up L's old position in the task force. But suspicions are soon raised that Light is actually Kira, and he starts searching for a successor amongst Kira's supporters. He enlists Taro Mikami and a reporter called Kiyomi Takada, both of whom carry on writing the names of criminals in their books, but he later ends Kiyomi's life when she starts to realize that he's Kira. Eventually, Light's alter ego is exposed, and his life is ended by the original owner of the Death Note, Ryuk. The end of the series led to much speculation from fans, who wondered what happened to Light after he lost his life. Some suggested that he merely faded into nothingness, while others believed there had to be more to the lore. One thing was certain though, anyone who uses a Death Note cannot gain entry into either heaven or hell, giving rise to theories that Light went to purgatory while he remained for all eternity. But some fans suggested that when he passed away, he became a Shinigami himself, but this theory was never confirmed. Then an OVA version of the series was released that seemed to give fans the answer that they were looking for. They noticed that it contained a Shinigami that looked eerily like Light, since he was wearing a similar coat and red tie around his forehead that resembled the tie worn by Light on his school uniform. Furthermore, he was seen walking with a limp, and seeing how Light was wounded in the leg before he passed away, they thought that it made sense that this was a reincarnated Light. While many fans feel the theory has been fully confirmed, others reject this idea, since the Shinigami was seen wearing goggles, and that theory contradicts some of the show's rules. Number 3. When talking about conspiracy theories regarding TV shows, one would imagine that the last show to be mentioned would be the sitcom Seinfeld, which kept audiences glued to their screens for 9 seasons, from the late 1980s to the 1990s. The truth is, though, that it spawned many such theories, one of which suggests that the hallway outside of Jerry Seinfeld, the main character's New York apartment, cannot exist. This theory has since been spoken about at length on the internet, with some users going as far as to create sketches of the apartment's kitchen and the hallway outside, showing that they would intersect and that the hallway therefore isn't real. Another discussion that is often found online is where Jerry's neighbor Kramer gets his money from, since he never has a job and is always taking food from Jerry's kitchen, and yet we know that he does indeed have money. It's been suggested that he was married at one point and got divorced right before the events that we see in the show. It also explains his views on marriage, which he describes as man-made prisons that are created to make men miserable. Fans suggest that he received a large amount of money in the divorce and hence no longer needs to work. It's also been theorized that he inherited a lot of money or that he's an excellent gambler, despite often complaining about how much money he's lost. It's also been theorized that the characters in the show were taken from the cartoon Peanuts, which features Charlie Brown. Fans have speculated that Jerry is Linus, Elaine is Lucy, George is Charlie Brown, and Kramer is Pigpen, since he has no qualms about getting his hands dirty, though this has never been proven. Then there's the theory that Jerry isn't really a very good stand-up comedian. His friends often allude to the fact that he reuses some of his older material, and in one instance, he states that he would be unable to perform an hour-long set at a middle school, suggesting that he either has no new material or is afraid of being booed off stage. One of the more prevailing theories, though, stems from season 7, when George becomes engaged to a woman called Susan Ross, played by Heidi Swedberg. In the show, Susan is an ambitious NBC executive who hails from a rich family. She and George date on and off again for a while, but eventually decide to get married. But their plans never come to fruition as tragedy strikes, much to his relief since he realizes that he doesn't really want to go through with the marriage. Susan, though, is none the wiser and continues to make wedding plans, which involves sending out invitations. She's seen licking the envelopes and placing the invitations inside, but then suddenly collapses, having ingested too much of the toxic glue used to seal them. George rushes her to the hospital, but to his strange relief, he's then informed by a doctor that she passed away, giving rise to a few fan conspiracy theories. Fans struggled to understand why the character would no longer appear in the show, and they started speculating that the decision may have had more to do with the actress than the show's plot. This was later confirmed by Jason Alexander, who played the role of George. He approached the show's writers and informed them that he found it impossible to work with Swedberg since they had no chemistry, an opinion shared by most of the rest of the cast. All of these actors did, though, state that they had nothing against her, but that they were just unable to sync with her during filming. She's since appeared in several other shows and has never encountered the same problem on any of those sets. Number 2. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe is a cartoon that needs no introduction to most people, especially those who spent a lot of time watching TV in the 1980s. The original series aired from 1983 to 1985 and introduced audiences for the first time to He-Man, the most powerful man in all the universe. His main enemy was a character called Skeletor, who sought to overthrow the kingdom of Eternia, but He-Man and his companions always managed to save the day somehow, whether by brute force, magic, or weapons. But not many people know that Skeletor doesn't belong in the same reality as He-Man and his friends. He originally hailed from a different dimension, but was transported to Eternia during the Great Wars when a dimensional wall was damaged. His main purpose in the show is to reopen this rift, allowing his cronies to enter the realm of Eternia, and his hope is that when this happens, they'll be able to overthrow the powers that be. The show saw a resurrection in the form of a reimagining in 2021, which saw new storylines being developed alongside the characters that we've come to know so well, and it's given rise to a fan theory that has since been confirmed. It concerns one of the other villains in the show, Hordak. He's the leader of the Evil Horde, which is an army of demon warriors and Skeletor's mentor. According to the show's lore, Skeletor betrayed Hordak, sending him to another dimension before being transported to Eternia. But Hordak found a way to travel to Eternia, and there he swears to take the reins of Eternia before Skeletor can. He's also the main antagonist to She-Ra, He-Man's twin sister, and in the series called She-Ra, Princess of Power, he rules over the planet Etheria. While seeking vengeance on Skeletor, he also fights against He-Man and his friends in a bid to destroy Castle Grayskull, which is where He-Man lives alongside the sorceress and the spirit of Grayskull. Hordak's history was revealed in more detail in the Masters of the Universe Revolution No. 2 comic, which serves as a prequel to the 2021 and 2022 He-Man and the Masters of the Universe series that was released on Netflix. It's here that a popular fan theory was finally confirmed, much to the delight of the show's fans. It all started with the She-Ra, Princess of Power series, where viewers were first introduced to a character called Horde Prime, who serves as Hordak's master. Fans noticed that Hordak and Horde Prime bore some similarities, and before long they started speculating that the two characters may be related. This theory only grew when Mattel released a Horde Prime action figure in 2012, which fans noticed looked a lot like Hordak. The theory was finally confirmed in the comic when Hordak and Keldor, who would later become Skeletor, are engaged in a fight. It's here that it was finally revealed that Hordak and Horde Prime are brothers, bringing the mystery to a long-awaited close. Number 1. Reality TV shows are often the subject of fan conspiracy theories, many of which have been confirmed as true throughout the years, and very often not in a good way. The shows are often faked and scripted while creating the impression that the opposite is true. For example, a show called Storage Wars became very popular during the 2010s, and surprisingly it's still being aired today, despite a scandal that erupted in 2012. The premise of the show is a simple one. Potential buyers gather outside a set of storage lockers that have been abandoned by their owners, and they bid on each locker in hopes of finding something valuable inside. There are some rules though. No one is allowed to step foot inside the lockers or handle any of the items inside. Bidders are allowed to look inside the lockers from the open door, but are blissfully unaware of what they're bidding on. In some instances, after submitting a winning bid, they're pleased to find valuable items that are usually resold from their pawn shops, but sometimes the lockers contain nothing but trash, resulting in the bidder potentially losing a lot of money. Viewers found the show engaging, since they found out what was hidden in the lockers when the winning bidders started unpacking it. And soon they became acquainted with different regular bidders: Dave Hester, Daryl Sheets, Jared Schultz, and Brandy Passante, among others. Then, in 2012, the show received a lot of criticism when Dave Hester, also known as the Yup Man, accused the show's producers of rigging the lockers. He stated that they often placed valuable items in the lockers to drum up more drama from the viewers at home, and this was a conspiracy theory that had been growing over the last couple seasons of the show. This resulted in a legal battle that was later settled amicably, but the show's reputation had been damaged beyond repair, and many viewers never returned. But the conspiracy theory was confirmed. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.